The force field hummed with an eerie blue glow as Lyra traced her finger along its surface, watching purple sparks dance where her silvery skin made contact. The guard passing by her cell quickened his pace, refusing to meet her gaze. She couldn't blame him, she'd seen what her touch could do to organic matter. Fascinating response pattern, a voice remarked from beyond the barrier. The quantum resonance suggests conscious control rather than random destruction. Lyra turned, surprised to find not another nervous guard but a human man studying her with genuine interest. He wore civilian clothes rather than a military uniform, and his dark eyes held none of the fear she'd grown accustomed to seeing. "And you are?" she asked, keeping her voice cold despite her curiosity. "Dr. James Harrison. Though most people just call me James." He pulled up the room's single chair, settling into it like they were meeting for coffee rather than a high-security interrogation. "I've been studying your case file. Another scientist come to examine the monster?" Lyra approached the barrier, noting with interest that he didn't step back like the others. "Actually, I'm more interested in discussing quantum mechanics and your unique ability to manipulate molecular bonds." His eyes sparkled with genuine fascination. "The theoretical applications alone are revolutionary." Lyra blinked, thrown off balance. "You're either very brave or very foolish. I prefer intellectually curious." He leaned forward. "Tell me, when you break down matter at the molecular level, can you control the dispersal pattern?" Despite herself, Lyra found the tension in her shoulders easing. It had been so long since anyone had spoken to her as anything other than a weapon or a threat. The process requires precise focus. Too much power and the chain reaction becomes unstable. Yet you maintain perfect control over your own cellular structure. James gestured to her containment suit. "Even your clothing stays intact. That suggests remarkable precision." Their discussion flowed naturally into theoretical physics, James asking insightful questions that made Lyra remember her own love of science before the military had discovered her abilities. She found herself drawn into debates about quantum theory and molecular manipulation that she hadn't engaged in since when? The memory slipped away like smoke. "You're different," she said finally, studying him. "The others they've sent, they only wanted to know how to weaponize my power. Perhaps because I'm not here officially." His smile turned sheepish. "I may have borrowed some credentials to get in." "You broke into a maximum security facility just to discuss science." "When you put it that way, it does sound a bit reckless." He shrugged. "But something about your case didn't add up. The destruction they claim you caused, the pattern was too precise, too controlled. It didn't match your documented abilities." Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. "What are you suggesting?" "I think someone wanted you contained, and they didn't care what story they had to fabricate to make it happen." He glanced at his watch. "Unfortunately, my borrowed access won't last much longer. But I'll be back." "Why?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. James stood, his expression serious. "Because you deserve the truth. And because I suspect you're not the monster they've made you out to be." He started toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Lyra? When the power fluctuates in exactly 37 minutes, the force field will drop for 2.3 seconds. Just in case you're feeling as reckless as I am." He disappeared through the door, leaving Lyra staring after him with a mixture of confusion and something that felt dangerously like hope. For the first time since her capture, she found herself counting the minutes, wondering if the mysterious James was offering more than just conversation. 37 minutes later, when the lights flickered and the force field wavered, she had her answer. And for the first time in years, Lyra smiled as she stepped through the barrier, her destructive power held carefully in check. Perhaps it was time to see just how reckless she could be. Rain streaked down the windows of James's safe house, an abandoned research facility on the outskirts of New Seattle. Lyra stood transfixed by the water patterns, her silvery skin reflecting the storm's lightning. Behind her, James worked methodically at a makeshift lab station, his fingers dancing across holographic displays. "The rain doesn't burn here," she said softly, pressing her palm against the cool glass. "On my world, it would melt flesh from bone." James paused his work, watching her reflection. "Is that why you learned to control your power? To survive?" "Perhaps." Another flash of lightning illuminated her features. "Though sometimes I wonder if I ever truly learned control, or if I just learned to cage myself. The readings suggest otherwise." James projected a hologram of her molecular structure. "Your power isn't purely destructive, it's transformative. You don't just break things down, you understand them at their most fundamental level." Lyra turned from the window, studying the complex patterns floating in the air. Something about them tugged at her memory, familiar equations and forgotten theories. "This research. I've seen it before. I thought you might." James's voice was careful, measured. "It matches theoretical work published 15 years ago by a scientist named Lyra Valtari." The name hit her like a physical blow. Images flashed through her mind, sterile labs, excited discussions, groundbreaking discoveries. "That's impossible. I'm not human." James stepped closer, the hologram casting blue light across his features. "The military did an impressive job erasing your history, but they couldn't erase everything. Especially from someone who'd spent years studying your work." Lyra's legs felt weak. She gripped the window ledge, her power flickering beneath her skin. "I was a researcher. One of the best. Your theories on molecular manipulation revolutionized quantum physics. Then you discovered you could actually implement those theories yourself." His expression darkened. "That's when they decided you were too dangerous to remain free. They changed me," she whispered, looking at her silvery skin. "Transformed me into something else. They tried to." James reached for her hand, unafraid of her touch. "But they couldn't change who you are inside. Your brilliance, your precision, your dedication to understanding rather than destroying, that's all still there." Before she could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. James cursed, rushing to his security feeds. "They found us faster than expected. We need to move." "Why are you helping me?" Lyra asked as he gathered essential equipment. "Why risk everything?" James paused, meeting her gaze. "Because 15 years ago, you were my mentor. You taught me that science should serve understanding, not destruction. When they took you, when they twisted your work and your body into a weapon, I promised I wouldn't stop until I found a way to help you remember who you really are." The revelation staggered her. More memories surfaced, a younger James, eager to learn, full of questions that challenged and delighted her. Their shared excitement over new discoveries, the easy rapport that developed between mentor and student. "The military is breaching the perimeter," James announced, shouldering a bag of equipment. "Any chance your molecular manipulation works on security doors?" Lyra flexed her fingers, feeling power surge through them. "I suppose it's time to find out." She approached the reinforced door, placing her hand against it. This time, instead of raw destruction, she focused on understanding, seeing the molecular bonds, finding their weak points, encouraging them to gracefully separate rather than shatter. The door dissolved into harmless particles, leaving their escape route clear. James grinned. "Now that's the Lyra I remember. Elegant solutions over brute force." They fled through darkened corridors as armed forces stormed the facility. Lyra found herself moving with newfound purpose, her power no longer a burden but a tool. Each obstacle they encountered fell before her precise manipulation, transformed rather than destroyed. "We need to reach my ship," James said as they descended emergency stairs. "I have more of your research there, more proof of who you really are." "And then what?" Lyra asked, dissolving another security barrier. "Then we expose the truth. Show the world that they turned a brilliant scientist into a weapon because they feared what they couldn't control." He caught her arm, pulling her to a stop. But first, we need to finish what they interrupted 15 years ago. Understanding dawned. The molecular stabilizer. My original research, it wasn't about destruction at all. It was about control. About understanding matter so completely that you could guide its transformation. James's eyes shone with excitement. With your power and my modifications to your original design, we could finally make it work. Gunfire erupted above them. Lyra reacted instinctively, not destroying the bullets but altering their trajectory at the molecular level. They dissolved into harmless light, their energy dispersed safely into the air. Beautiful, James breathed, watching her work. You always did have a flair for turning weapons into wonders. They burst out into the rain, making a dash for the concealed ship. As they ran, Lyra felt the last walls in her mind crumbling. She wasn't just a weapon, wasn't just destruction given form. She was a scientist, a seeker of knowledge, a transformer of reality itself. And perhaps most importantly, she wasn't alone anymore. The ship's hatch opened at their approach, warm light spilling out into the storm. As they climbed aboard, Lyra caught James's arm. "Thank you," she said softly. "For helping me remember who I am." His smile held years of dedication and newfound hope. "We're just getting started. Ready to show the universe what happens when two scientists decide to rewrite the rules." Lyra felt her own smile forming, no longer strange on her transformed features. "I thought you'd never ask." As the ship lifted off into the storm-dark sky, Lyra watched the rain streak past the viewport. She had spent so long believing she could only destroy. Now, with recovered memories and renewed purpose, she was ready to create something entirely new, starting with her own destiny. The orbital research station hung like a silver needle against the velvet black of space. Lyra stood at the ship's viewport, watching it grow larger as they approached. Her silvery fingers traced patterns in the condensation on the glass, molecular formulas she now remembered developing lifetimes ago. "That's where it all started," James said softly, joining her at the window. "The Helios Institute. Where you first discovered the truth about your abilities. And where they decided to turn me into something else." Lyra's reflection shimmered, overlaid against the stars. "I remember now. The day everything changed." The memory unfurled like a blooming flower. She had been running tests on molecular reconstruction, a routine experiment. But something had gone wrong, or rather, something had gone impossibly right. The sample hadn't just changed under her observation, it had responded to her will, transforming at the quantum level. "You came to me first," James said, his voice gentle. "Your student, barely out of graduate studies. You trusted me with the discovery before anyone else. Because you understood." Another memory surfaced. "You saw the potential for healing, for creation. Not just destruction. Fat lot of good that did us." James's hand found hers, warm against her cool skin. "They had already infiltrated the institute. The military had been watching your research for months. The station's docking protocols initiated, automated systems guiding their ship into a secure bay." Lyra felt her power stirring beneath her skin, responding to the proximity of the place where everything had changed. "The security systems still recognize my old codes," James explained as they prepared to board. "Most of the station is automated now, minimal crew, maximum secrecy. Your original lab should be untouched." 15 years, Lyra mused. All that time, lost. Not lost. James's eyes held fierce determination. Just waiting to be reclaimed. They moved through the station's sterile corridors like ghosts. Every step brought back more memories for Lyra, late nights in the lab, breakthrough moments, casual conversations over coffee in the observation dome. This place had been her home, her sanctuary. Until it wasn't. The door to her old laboratory still bore her name, Dr. Lyra Valtari, Quantum Mechanics Research Division. James bypassed the security with practiced ease, and they stepped into a room frozen in time. They sealed it after. He trailed off, watching her face. After they took you. Lyra moved through the space in a daze, touching equipment she had once used daily. Her fingers traced the edge of her old desk, where she had first noticed her power manifesting, the metal responding to her touch, restructuring itself at the molecular level. Here. She stopped before a locked cabinet, its surface clouded with age. This is where I kept the original research. The true purpose of the molecular manipulation project. James stepped forward, ready to hack the lock, but Lyra held up a hand. Closing her eyes, she reached out with her power, not to destroy, but to communicate. The lock's molecular structure sang to her, and she guided it gently, asking rather than demanding. It dissolved into silver mist, reforming as an open latch. Now that, James whispered, is the Lyra I remember. Inside the cabinet, preserved in stasis, lay a single data crystal. Lyra lifted it with trembling fingers. Project Harmony, she said softly. Not a weapon. Never a weapon. It was meant to be a bridge. Between organic and inorganic matter, James finished. A way to heal the divide between flesh and machine, to repair damage at the molecular level. He touched the crystal reverently. The military saw it as a way to create super soldiers. They never understood. But you did. Lyra turned to him, memories crystallizing into sharp focus. That's why they tried to kill you that day. You tried to stop them from taking me. James's hand went unconsciously to his chest, where Lyra knew a scar still marked the bullet's path. I failed. No. She caught his hand, pressing it between her own. You survived. You spent 15 years searching for me. You helped me remember who I am. An alarm shattered the moment, proximity alert screaming through the station's corridors. James rushed to a terminal, his fingers flying over the controls. Military vessels, he reported grimly. They must have tracked us. We have maybe 10 minutes before they dock. Lyra looked down at the data crystal, then at her transformed hands. They wanted a weapon, she said quietly. Perhaps it's time to show them exactly what they created. Lyra. James's voice held warning and concern. She smiled, and for the first time, it felt completely natural on her altered features. Trust me. I remember who I am now. And I remember how to do more than destroy. Moving to the lab's central console, she inserted the data crystal. 15 years of lost research bloomed across the screens, not just theories of destruction, but of transformation. Of healing. Of hope. We're about to have company, James announced, watching the approaching ships. Good. Lyra flexed her fingers, feeling power surge through them, power she finally fully understood. It's time they learned what happens when you try to turn a creator into a destroyer. She reached out with her ability, not to break or shatter, but to change. To transform. To fulfill the true purpose of Project Harmony. The station's very structure began to respond to her touch, molecules dancing to a symphony only she could hear. And as armed forces prepared to board, Lyra Valtari, scientist, mentor, instrument of change, made ready to show the universe what she had truly been meant to be all along. Not a weapon of war, but a catalyst for transformation. And standing beside her, James watched with pride as the student who had never lost faith prepared to help his mentor rewrite the laws of reality itself. The real question wasn't whether they would survive the coming confrontation. The question was whether the universe was ready for what would emerge when science and spirit finally found their harmony. The military ships docked with precision, their airlocks engaging with metallic thuds that echoed through the station. Lyra stood in her old lab, hands pressed against the central console, feeling the pulse of the station through her molecular connection. Beside her, James worked frantically to integrate her old research with the station's systems. They're deploying troops, he reported, watching security feeds. Standard breach formation. They're not taking any chances. They shouldn't, Lyra replied, her silver skin gleaming under the lab's lights. Last time they caught me unaware. This time. She let the thought trail off as she felt the first soldiers enter the station. Through her enhanced connection to the station's structure, she could sense them, heavy boots on metal floors, weapons charged with potential energy, hearts beating with controlled fear. They moved like a well-oiled machine, but Lyra now understood machines better than they ever could. The data integration is at 60%, James announced. We need maybe 5 more minutes. A harsh voice crackled over the station's comm system, Dr. Valtari, Dr. Harrison. This is Admiral Thorne. You are ordered to surrender immediately. Lyra's head snapped up at the name. Another memory surfaced, a stern face watching her early experiments, eyes cold with calculation rather than scientific curiosity. Thorne, she whispered. He was there. The day they took me. James's expression hardened. He was more than there. He orchestrated the whole thing. Turned your research into a weapons program. The Admiral's voice came again. Your containment facility was designed specifically for your abilities, Valtari. Did you really think we wouldn't have contingencies for your escape? As if on cue, a new sensation rippled through Lyra's connection to the station, a wave of energy spreading through the molecular structure of the walls themselves. Where it passed, she felt her power weaken, her control slipping. They're deploying quantum dampeners, she gasped, pulling back from the console. The same technology they used to. To alter you in the first place, James finished grimly. But they don't know about Project Harmony. About what you've remembered. Lyra straightened, feeling the dampening field approach. No, they don't. They still think I'm just a weapon. A smile curved her lips. Let's show them how wrong they are. She reached out, not with raw power, but with understanding. The dampening field was based on her own research, twisted and perverted, but still fundamentally her work. She could feel its structure, its purpose, its flaws. Integration at 80%, James reported as booted feet approached their position. Whatever you're planning. Trust me. Lyra closed her eyes, remembering everything, not just the science, but the purpose behind it. Project Harmony had never been about control or destruction. It had been about synthesis, about bringing unlike things together in perfect balance. The lab doors exploded inward. Armed soldiers poured through, weapons trained on them. Behind them strode Admiral Thorne himself, older but still radiating cold authority. Step away from the console, he ordered. Both of you. Why? Lyra asked, her voice calm. Afraid I might remember too much. You are a failed experiment, Thorne said flatly. A weapon that proved uncontrollable. Nothing more. You never understood, Lyra replied, her power building despite the dampening field. You looked at my research and saw only destruction. You never grasped what it was really about. Integration complete, James said quietly. Lyra smiled. Perfect timing. She released her power, not in a wave of destruction, but as a pulse of pure transformation. The dampening field shattered, its energy redirected and repurposed. Where it had sought to suppress, it now enhanced. Where it had meant to contain, it now connected. The soldiers' weapons dissolved, their components reorganizing into harmless light. The very walls of the station began to shift, molecular structures flowing like liquid metal. Impossible, Thorne breathed, watching his carefully constructed cage transform. No, Lyra corrected, her silver skin now glowing with internal light. This is what was always possible. What you tried to prevent. Through her connection to the station, she could feel everything, every molecule, every atom, every quantum possibility. Project Harmony sung through her veins, not as a weapon, but as a tool of creation. The station's structural integrity, one of the soldiers reported nervously. It's changing. Not destroying, James said, watching with wonder as Lyra's power reshaped reality around them. Evolving. Thorn reached for his sidearm, but Lyra was faster. With a gesture, the weapon transformed, its deadly purpose converted to something new. In his hand now sat a small crystal, pulsing with the same light that filled Lyra. "That's a record of everything," she told him. "Every experiment, every modification, every attempt to turn my work into weapons. The world will know what you did." "You'll never prove it," Thorn snarled, but his confidence was cracking. "We don't have to prove anything," James said, stepping forward. "The evidence is written in Lyra's very molecules. In what you tried to make her become. And in what I chose to be instead," Lyra finished. The station hummed with new energy, not the sterile power of containment, but the vibrant force of transformation. Around them, soldiers lowered their empty hands, watching in awe as the cold military architecture bloomed into something organic and alive. "This is what Project Harmony was meant to be," Lyra said softly. "Not a weapon of war, but a bridge between what is and what could be. Between destruction and creation. Between fear and understanding." She turned to James, who watched her with pride and something deeper. "Ready to help me show the universe what's possible when we stop trying to cage power and learn to channel it instead?" His answer was written in his smile, in the years of faith that had led to this moment. Behind them, Thorn and his soldiers stood surrounded by the proof of their failure, and of Lyra's triumph. The weapon they had tried to create had become something far more powerful, a force not of destruction, but of transformation. And as the altered station drifted among the stars, its new purpose written in light and possibility, Lyra finally understood. Sometimes the greatest act of defiance isn't in destroying what caged you, but in transforming it into something beautiful instead. The transformed Helio station drifted through space like a living crystal, its surfaces rippling with iridescent light. In what had once been the main observation deck, now a garden of crystalline structures that responded to thought and emotion, Lyra watched Earth rotate slowly below. "The military's withdrawing," James announced, studying holographic reports. "Thorn's arrest is all over the news feeds. They're calling it the scientific scandal of the century." "And what are they calling me?" Lyra asked softly, her silver skin reflecting the station's ambient glow. "A victim. A hero. A revolution in human-alien relations." He smiled. "Though technically, you're as human as I am. Just, upgraded." Lyra flexed her fingers, watching molecular patterns dance across her transformed flesh. "I'm not sure human quite covers what I am anymore. Maybe that's the point." James joined her at the viewport, his reflection overlapping with hers in the crystalline surface. "You're proof that humanity can become something more without losing what makes us human in the first place." The thought struck something deep within her, a truth she'd been approaching since regaining her memories. Her transformation hadn't stripped away her humanity, it had enhanced it, allowing her to understand the universe at its most fundamental level while retaining the heart that gave that understanding purpose. "We're receiving requests," James continued, "from scientists, governments, medical researchers. Everyone wants to know more about Project Harmony. They want the power," Lyra said, "but without bitterness. They always want the power. They want hope." James's hand found hers, warm against her cool skin. "You've shown them that transformation doesn't have to mean destruction. That change can heal instead of harm." A notification chimed softly, another research team requesting permission to visit the station. Lyra had insisted on keeping the facility open, transforming it from a place of secret experiments into a center for collaborative study. The military's weapons program had been exposed, but the real work was just beginning. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked suddenly. "Spending 15 years searching for me? Risking everything?" James laughed, a sound that still surprised her with its warmth. "Only when you ask questions like that." Before she could respond, he pulled her into a kiss. Unlike their first desperate embraces during the escape, this one was slow, deliberate, full of 15 years of dedication and newfound possibilities. When they parted, Lyra felt something bubble up from deep within her, a sound she hadn't made since before her transformation. She laughed. The sound echoed through the crystalline chamber, causing the structures to resonate in harmony. Light danced across the walls, responding to her joy just as readily as it had to her power. Now that, James said softly, is the most beautiful transformation yet. What? Me learning to laugh again. You remembering that you never forgot how. His eyes held hers. They tried to turn you into a weapon, but they couldn't change your heart. That's what scared them most, I think. Not your power to destroy, but your capacity to love. New alerts flashed across the holographic displays, more scientists requesting access, more governments demanding explanations, more people seeking understanding of what Lyra represented. The future stretched out before them, full of challenges and possibilities. We should get to work, Lyra said, but she made no move to leave the viewport. The world is waiting for answers. Let them wait a moment longer. James drew her closer. I spent 15 years searching for you. I think we've earned a few minutes just to be. Below them, Earth continued its eternal dance. The station hummed with potential, its transformed structure a testament to what humanity could become when it chose creation over destruction, understanding over fear. And at its heart, a woman who had been meant to be a weapon stood in the arms of the man who had helped her become something far more powerful instead. You know, Lyra said thoughtfully, for all their attempts to control my power, they never understood the most basic truth. What's that? She smiled, and the station smiled with her, crystals catching and reflecting her joy. The greatest power isn't in destruction or even transformation. It's in having someone believe in you even when you've forgotten how to believe in yourself. James's answering smile held 15 years of proof. Now that's the kind of science I can dedicate my life to studying. Haven't you already? Some experiments bear repeating. Their laughter mingled together, rippling through the transformed station like music. And if anyone watching from Earth saw the former weapon platform shine a little brighter, well, that was just another transformation to add to the list. For in the end, the universe's greatest mysteries weren't found in quantum mechanics or molecular manipulation. They were found in the simple truth that love could transform even the deadliest weapon into something beautiful, and that sometimes the most human thing of all was learning to laugh again. The station continued its orbit, no longer a place of secrets and fear, but a beacon of hope and possibility. And at its heart, two scientists who had found each other across time and space continued their greatest experiment of all, proving that with enough understanding, anything could be transformed. Even the future itself.